Welcome to Life Stories, where we share inspiring tales of overcoming challenges, embracing change, and discovering the power of perseverance. Today's story is about Sarah, a dedicated professional who spent 5 years giving everything to a company that never recognized her value. After being passed over for a promotion in favor of office politics, Sarah made a bold decision that would change her life forever. This is a journey of resilience, self-discovery, and the ultimate realization that sometimes, being too focused on results is exactly what you need to succeed. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to begin today's story. I sat across from Jonathan, my boss, in his large, polished office. The room was dominated by a sleek glass desk, and the faint smell of leather filled the air as Jonathan leaned back in his chair. His expression smug, his polished shoes gleamed under the bright fluorescent lights, a stark contrast to the bitterness that bubbled beneath my calm exterior. I had been here for 5 long years, giving everything I had to this company, yet here I was, once again being passed over. He didn't seem to notice my clenched fists, or the growing ache in my chest as he spoke. "Sarah," he began, his voice slow, calculated, "you're great at what you do. Nobody's denying that. But Olivia, she knows how to work with people. She brings energy to the office. You're just too focused on results." The words stung more than they should have. Too focused on results? I couldn't believe it. The frustration and anger I had been holding in for months, years, really, finally began to rise. I had given everything to this company. I had sacrificed weekends, pulled late nights, and worked through early mornings without complaint. I had single-handedly landed our biggest clients, streamlined operations, and increased our department's efficiency by 40%. I had done all of this with one singular focus: to achieve the best results possible. And yet, Jonathan, my boss, the one who should have seen the dedication, the effort, and the value, was telling me that the reason I wasn't being promoted was that I was too focused on results. I felt my heart race. But I kept my voice steady. I refused to let him see the turmoil inside me. He was so confident in his decision, so blind to everything I had worked for, that it made me sick. But I knew better than to let him see my anger. I had learned, in these long years, that showing emotion in these moments only made you look weak. And that wasn't going to be me, not anymore. Jonathan continued, oblivious to the storm raging within me. "You know, Olivia has been with the company for barely 2 years. But she's mastered the art of building relationships. She knows how to stroke egos, to make everyone feel heard. You're just too focused on your work." It was as though he was speaking about someone else. Someone who didn't exist. Olivia, who had been with the company for a fraction of the time I had, was already in the spotlight. She had mastered the fine art of office politics, of making sure the right people noticed her, of taking credit for work that wasn't hers, of keeping everyone around her satisfied with her flattery. And it seemed, to Jonathan, that was enough. I gripped the armrests of my chair, trying to keep my composure. My mind kept going back to everything I had done, my contributions, my sacrifices. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't just the promotion I was upset about. It was the lack of recognition for the blood, sweat, and tears I had poured into this company. I wasn't just a cog in the machine. I was a creator, a strategist, someone who had transformed the way this company operated. But none of that seemed to matter. The longer he spoke, the clearer it became to me. Corporate success wasn't about merit. It was about playing the game. It was about knowing whose ego to stroke and whose coffee to fetch. And it wasn't just Jonathan or Olivia. It was the entire corporate system. I had spent years believing that hard work, results, and dedication would eventually be rewarded. But now I realized that wasn't the reality. I had to get out. My thoughts snapped back to the present when Jonathan's voice cut through the fog of my emotions. "We'll give Olivia the promotion. But you're still invaluable to us. We'll find a way to work with you. You can't be hasty, Sarah." Hasty? The word hit me like a slap. I stood up, interrupting him before he could say more. My voice was calm, But there was a firmness in it that I hadn't expected. I've given this a lot of thought. And you're right, Jonathan. I am focused on results. That's why I've decided to pursue other opportunities, where that quality is valued. I reached into my bag and pulled out a crisp white envelope, placing it gently on his desk. The tension in the room was palpable. Jonathan's eyes widened in surprise. And for a moment, he just stared at the envelope as if he couldn't believe what I was doing. Here's my resignation letter. My last day will be in 2 weeks. Jonathan's face faltered. His smile, that insufferable, confident smile, faded. For a brief moment, I saw a flash of panic in his eyes. It was a look I had never seen from him before. He wasn't expecting this. He wasn't prepared for me to walk away. Sarah, let's not be hasty, he said, his voice now tinged with desperation. This isn't the way to handle things. You're a key player here. You can't just leave. But I didn't respond. I turned and walked out of his office. My head held high, despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me: betrayal, frustration, sadness. There was also a strange sense of liberation. I had made a decision. It wasn't just about the promotion anymore. It was about proving that I was more than what they saw me as. I was going to take my talents elsewhere. To a place where results were valued. Where hard work wasn't overshadowed by office politics. As I made my way back to my desk, I felt the eyes of my coworkers on me. I could practically hear the whispers. Jessica, no doubt, was already imagining how she would redecorate my cubicle, relishing in her victory. But she had no idea what was coming. None of them did. What Jonathan didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I hadn't been working just for the company these past 5 years. In my spare time, when no one was watching, I had been building something of my own. Something that would make their promotion seem like a joke. And now, I was about to take it all to the next level. The following 2 weeks were a blur of emotion and calculated moves. As I settled into my routine of preparing for my departure, the weight of my decision began to settle in. I had been at this company for 5 years, pouring my heart and soul into my work. Yet all I had to show for it was the undeniable feeling that I had been overlooked. Undervalued. It wasn't just the promotion that hurt, it was the realization that I had been seen as nothing more than a cog in a machine. My contributions overlooked in favor of office politics. Olivia, of course, had already started strutting around the office like she owned the place. She had been promoted to lead the team I had been working with. Despite her lack of experience and tangible results, I watched her closely as she moved through the office, her voice sweet with fake sympathy whenever she passed my desk. One morning, she perched herself on the edge of my workstation, smiling with that all-too-familiar look of triumph. "Sarah," she said, her tone dripping with feigned concern. "I hope there are no hard feelings. I know you worked really hard for this promotion." She almost sounded like she believed it. "I just want to make sure we're still on good terms." I glanced up from my computer, my heart steady but my mind racing. I wasn't sure how she expected me to react, whether she wanted me to beg for forgiveness, to plead with her to give me the recognition I deserved. But instead, I just smiled. "No hard feelings at all. Olivia," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm sure you'll do great." She seemed to think my response was a sign of defeat. Her smile broadened, likely assuming that I had accepted my fate. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that, while they had been focused on their petty games and politics, I had been quietly building something revolutionary. For the past 3 years, in my spare time, I had been developing a project management system that would change everything. At first, it was just a tool to help me organize my own work. But over time, it became something far more powerful. I had tested it, refined it, and used it to achieve the results Jonathan had dismissed. I knew the potential this system had. It was my ticket to freedom, to proving my worth in ways they would never understand. But I didn't just build the system. I had already gone a step further. 6 months ago, I filed for a patent on the technology. It had been approved just the week before. And with my resignation letter, I had included a detailed report outlining the cost savings and efficiency improvements my system had brought to the company. I had left nothing to chance. They would know exactly what they were losing. I spent the last 2 weeks at the company doing what I had always done, working. But this time, I did it quietly. I spent my days methodically downloading copies of my work files. Not because I wanted to steal anything from them. That wasn't who I was, but because I needed proof. I needed the documentation that showed, without a doubt, how much I had contributed to this company. It wasn't about the recognition anymore. It was about making sure my contributions were acknowledged when they finally saw what I had achieved. And then, just as I had planned, the email came. Robert Anderson, the CEO of Anderson Industries, had heard through the grapevine that I was leaving Meridian. He wanted to meet for coffee. I couldn't help but smile when I saw his name in my inbox. It was exactly what I had been waiting for. The pieces were falling into place. And I was ready to take the next step. Our meeting was everything I had hoped for. Robert had been following my work for months. Impressed by the way I had transformed client relationships and streamlined processes at Meridian. He didn't just offer me a job. He offered me a partnership role, complete with full creative control over the implementation of my system across Anderson Industries. It wasn't just a job offer, it was a chance to build something from the ground up. To take everything I had created and watch it flourish. "We've been looking for someone like you, Sarah," Robert said as he slid the contract across the table. "Someone who understands that results matter." The offer was everything I had dreamed of. The salary was triple what I was making at Meridian, plus equity in the company. As I reached out to take the contract, my hands were steady, even though my heart was racing. This was what recognition felt like. This was what it felt like to be valued for my actual contributions. Not for how well I could play the corporate game. As I signed the contract, a sense of peace washed over me. I wasn't just leaving Meridian, I was moving on to something better. I was leaving behind the toxic office politics and stepping into a role where my results would be seen and appreciated. And, for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally on the right path. It wasn't about the money or the title. It was about respect. It was about proving to myself that I was more than just a cog in the machine. I was a creator, a leader, and soon, I would be in a position where I could shape the future of an entire company. And it felt good. Better than anything I had ever felt at Meridian. The transition to Anderson Industries was nothing short of extraordinary. It wasn't just the change in environment, though the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows and the sleek glass nameplate bearing my name were certainly nice. But it was the respect and recognition I received from day one. In contrast to my old company, where my hard work had been dismissed. Here, I was celebrated for exactly what I had always believed in. Results. Robert Anderson, the CEO, had called an all-hands meeting to introduce me. He didn't just announce my new position as Director of Operations and Strategic Innovation. He shared the story of my achievements and the value of the system I had developed. He didn't just want people to know what I had done. He wanted them to understand why it mattered. "Sarah isn't just joining our team," Robert said, standing at the front of the room. "She's bringing with her a revolutionary approach to project management that will transform how we operate. I expect everyone to give her their full cooperation." As I looked around the room at my new colleagues, there was no hesitation in their faces. They weren't looking at me with suspicion or skepticism, like I had grown used to at Meridian. They saw me for what I was, a game changer. And that sense of respect, the feeling of being valued not just for my title but for my contributions, was the most satisfying part of it all. Over the next few months, I threw myself into implementing my system across Anderson Industries. It was as if the pieces I had been working with all these years were finally falling into place. My system didn't just improve internal processes, it transformed the entire company's approach to efficiency and client management. Project completion times were cut in half. Client satisfaction scores hit record highs. And efficiency metrics soared to levels they had never reached before. And it didn't stop there. As the weeks passed, We began receiving inquiries from major clients who were eager to license the technology. The system I had developed was no longer just a tool for my own work. It was becoming an industry standard. I felt a deep sense of pride as I saw how my work was making an impact, not just within the company, but across the industry. But the real validation came when the news about my old company, Meridian Corp, started circulating. One day, as I was sitting in a team meeting, I received a text from an old colleague at Meridian. "You might want to check the industry news." It read, "Something big just dropped about Meridian Corp." I excused myself from the meeting, my heart racing as I pulled up the news site. The headline made me stop dead in my tracks. Meridian Corp's stock drops 30% following disastrous quarter. The article detailed how the company had lost 3 major clients in the past quarter, with several others threatening to follow suit. Project delays had spiraled out of control. Costs had skyrocketed, and efficiency metrics had plummeted. As I read through the article, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The projects that had been running smoothly when I was in charge, they were all managed through the system I had created. The organizational structure they had lost? That was the framework I had built, over 5 long years of hard work. I had done everything I could to streamline operations, to make things more efficient. But they had ignored me. And now, they were paying the price. Another text came in from David, a former colleague at Meridian. "Jessica's having a complete meltdown. She can't handle the workload. And Jonathan is starting to realize she has no idea what she's doing." It was almost poetic. Jessica, who had spent 2 years taking credit for my work, was now floundering in a position she wasn't prepared for. And Jonathan, who had dismissed every suggestion I made because I wasn't enough of a team player, was finally seeing the consequences of his actions. It was too late for him. Too late for Meridian. Too late for Jessica. I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Not because I wanted to see them fail, but because I had moved on. I had taken the rejection, the betrayal, and turned it into something powerful, something that would change the course of my life. And now, it was their turn to face the consequences. At Anderson Industries, my system was already showing remarkable results. Our clients were thrilled, and the company was thriving. Robert had already approved my proposal to expand the system company-wide, and we were in talks with several major clients who wanted to license the technology. It felt surreal. I had come so far from that day in Jonathan's office when he told me I was too focused on results. That criticism had turned out to be the greatest compliment he could have given me. As I stood in my office one evening, looking out over the city, I realized that the best revenge wasn't about getting even. It wasn't about watching Meridian crumble or seeing Jessica fail. It was about moving forward. About building something better than what I had left behind. And as I looked ahead, I knew that this was just the beginning. The journey I had started was far from over. As time passed, the changes I had hoped for began to unfold. Anderson Industries continued to thrive, thanks to the systems I had developed and implemented. My work had not only improved our internal processes but had set a new standard in the industry. But more than that, it had proven to me that success wasn't just about conforming to the expectations of others. It was about standing firm in your convictions, focusing on the results, and having the courage to create your own opportunities. Meanwhile, back at Meridian, the fallout from their poor decisions was becoming more evident. The company continued to struggle, and the whispers about how things had fallen apart without my leadership grew louder. Jessica, who had once seemed so invincible, was now drowning in the workload she could no longer manage, while Jonathan, who had never valued the real work, was left trying to salvage a sinking ship. Then, one day, as I was reviewing a new proposal for the global expansion of our system, I received an unexpected email from Jonathan. "I hope this finds you well." It began, "I wanted to reach out and acknowledge that I made a massive mistake in not recognizing your value to the company. The system you built was the backbone of our success, and we didn't realize it until it was gone." I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't the apology I had expected years ago, but it was one I didn't need anymore. My success spoke louder than any words could. As I leaned back in my chair, ready to move forward with even bigger plans, I knew one thing for sure: results mattered. And sometimes, the best way to prove your worth was to show the world exactly what they had missed out on. Remember to subscribe to our channel to follow more life stories.